the second episode of the last step of Abraham's life is the story of the patriarch's purchase of burial property in chapter 23, verse 1 through verse 20. This story describes how Abraham acquired a family burial site in Hebron when his wife Sarah died. The narrative emphasizes that the patriarch did not accept this property as a gift, but rather that he purchased it. This deed of property established his family's legal right to see the land of Canaan as their homeland. The Israelites following Moses understood the importance and implications of this purchased burial site for their own lives. It was their ancestral burial site. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were all buried there. They understood that it was their legal possession in the land, even prior to the conquest. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob spent much of their lives in and around Hebron. The Israelites were so committed to Hebron as their ancestral homeland that they even carried the bones of the patriarch Jacob back to Hebron for burial. This story about Abraham's purchased burial land demonstrated that the proper place for his descendants was none other than the land of the Canaanites. The third episode of Abraham's progeny and death is a touching story about Abraham's daughter-in-law, Rebekah, who became the wife of his special son Isaac in chapter 24, verse 1 through verse 67. In this story, in order to ensure that Isaac would avoid Canaanite corruption, Abraham insisted that Isaac not marry a Canaanite woman. But Abraham also ensured that Isaac would remain in the land of Canaan, the land of promise, by sending a servant to bring a wife to Isaac. By finding a wife for Isaac in this way, Abraham ensured a great future of blessings from God for Isaac and his descendants. The Israelites following Moses should have learned from this story that Isaac, their ancestral connection to Abraham, remained pure from Canaanite corruption, even as he maintained his homeland in Canaan. Isaac's bright future of blessing would be their bright future as well, so long as they resisted the corruption of the Canaanites who dwelled in the Promised Land. The final episode of Abraham's life is the story of the patriarch's death and heir in chapter 25, verse 1 through verse 18. This collection of several brief accounts lists Abraham's sons by wives other than Sarah. Then it turns to the patriarch's death, during which Isaac received Abraham's final blessing as his legal heir. Finally, it closes with a contrasting section that briefly lists Ishmael's descendants. This closing of Abraham's life had many implications for the original audience. It listed the other sons of Abraham to distinguish them from the Israelites. It highlighted Abraham's final blessing on Isaac to assure the Israelites following Moses that they were the true heirs of Abraham's promises. And it mentioned Ishmael's descendants to dispel any claims the Ishmaelites might have made to Abraham's inheritance. By closing his account of Abraham's life in this way, Moses settled the identity, rights, and responsibilities of Abraham's true descendants, the Israelites whom he led toward the Promised Land. So we see that Moses wrote his stories about the life of Abraham to teach the Israelites he led why and how they should leave Egypt behind and move toward the conquest of the Promised Land. To accomplish this goal, Moses stressed in various ways in each episode of the patriarch's life how the Israelites were the heirs of God's grace given to the patriarch, how they were responsible to be loyal to God as the patriarch had been responsible, how they would receive blessings from God as Abraham had, and how they would one day bless all the nations of the earth. Moses' account of Abraham's life had innumerable implications for the Israelites who followed him toward the Promised Land. In this lesson, we've looked at the original meaning of the account of Abraham's life in Genesis. And we've looked in two main directions to explore this original meaning. On the one hand, we've examined the connections Moses established between these stories and the experiences of the Israelites to whom he wrote. And on the other hand, we've looked at how Moses designed his stories to impact his original audience as they left Egypt behind and moved toward the conquest of Canaan. As we learn more about the connections Moses drew between Abraham and the original Israelite readers, and the impact that he expected his stories to have on his audience, we will discover how each episode of Abraham's life was intended not only to guide the Israelites. We will also be better able to discern how these stories should apply to our lives today.